We'll call the meeting of the Cannabis Compliance Board, State of Nevada, to order. This is Chair Douglas. If we can have a roll call to establish quorum.
Great, thank you. Member Merritt?
Present.
Member Durrett?
Here.
Member Nylander?
Here.
And Chair Douglas.
Here. Before we go into public comment, just an announcement that the issues related to new regulations for the cannabis lounges is at 1 o'clock. This is not the meeting for that. That will be at 1 o'clock today. So with that, we'll go into public comment.
Mr.
Do
Chairman,
we have any?
Mr. Chairman, this is Christy Joyce, the court reporter. Just a reminder to have everybody state their name before they're speaking because I don't know voices very well yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Tyler Klimas for the record. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to provide public comment today? Seeing none in Las Vegas, is there anyone in Carson City wishing to provide public comment today?
There's no public comment in Carson City.
Thank you. Chair, back to you.
With that, we will go to item number 2, minutes of the meeting. We have an A and B, consideration for approval of the February 22nd, 2022 Cannabis Compliance Board meetings, minutes for action. And we have item B, consideration for approval of the March 4th, 2022 Cannabis Compliance Board emergency meeting minutes. We can take them in one vote or we can take them separately depending on the preference of board members after review.
I had no questions or comments, Mr. Chairman. This is Member Nylander.
Thank you.
Member Merritt, I have no questions.
Member Durrett, I move to approve the minutes from the February 22nd and March 4th meetings under agenda item 2A and B.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Member Merritt. I would second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion? Hearing no additional discussion, call for the vote. All those in favor of adoption of the minutes as proposed, both A and B, please say aye.
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 Aye. Carries unanimous. We note that Dr. Young is not present at this time. That would then move us to item number 3, consent agenda complaints, approval to proceed with disciplinary action. Respondent A, possible action if we can have our information.
Thank you, Chair. Tyler Klimas for the record. Item 3A on the agenda concerns 2 complaints for disciplinary action pursuant to NRS 678-8510. The Attorney General has reviewed these violations and has recommended proceeding with disciplinary action. As we did at our last meeting, I'll be requesting board approval to proceed with each of these 2 disciplinary actions. If approved, I will then authorize service of the complaints. And if approved, all the complaints will be filed and served within an appropriate time. And once they're out for service, the CCB will post them on our website. So as to respondent A, the complaint will allege violations of NCCR 4, NCCR 6, and NCCR 10. And as to respondent B, the complaint will allege violations of NCCR 4 and or NCCR 6. Chair.
The information been provided. We note for the record, as to both of these matters, the board has not seen these. They've been reviewed by the Attorney General's office and our director and propose to move forward with service of the complaints. With that, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Member.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Durrett.
Member Durrett, I move to approve the issuing of the complaints under agenda item 3A, number 1 and 2 against respondent A and respondent B.
We need to take one.
I'm sorry, against under agenda item A1 as to respondent A.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second
This
the
is
motion.
Member
Member
Merritt, I
Knight.
second.
We know we have dueling seconds. Oof. With that, any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Carried unanimously by 4 members. With that, we proceed to number 2. On your consent.
Mr. Chairman, this is Board Member Nylander. I would move for approval of item number 3.2 as reflected on the agenda.
With that, do we have a second?
This is Member Merritt, I would second.
Been moved in second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 4 members carried. Thank you. That moves us to item number 4 on the agenda, consideration of proposed settlement agreements to resolve disciplinary action. The first matter up, A, Cannabis Compliance Board versus Eric Rodriguez, case number 2022-61. If we can have a report.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. For the record, L. Christopher Rath, Senior Deputy Attorney General. We have 4 settlement agreements up for your approval at this meeting under Agenda Item 4. As usual, we'll provide you with a brief summary and the Attorney General's recommendation for approval. You may then ask us any questions you wish, and counsel with the respondents or the respondents themselves will also be present to respond to any of your questions, and then you may decide what action to take. Senior Deputy Attorney General Emily Bordelove will present the first settlement agreement under Agenda Item 4A for the case of CCB versus Eric Rodriguez, case number 2022-61. After that, I will present the remaining agreements. So I'll now turn it over to Ms. Bordelove for the first one.
This is Senior Deputy Attorney General Emily Bordelove for the record. This first case settlement agreement we have is for case CCB versus Eric Rodriguez. As Mr. Rath said, case number 202261. We have Mr. Rodriguez respondent here via Zoom to respond to any questions you may have. The complaint in this case was filed and served on February 7th, 2022. After receiving a copy of the complaint, Mr. Rodriguez reached out to discuss settlement of the matter. He has not hired counsel to represent himself, and he's representing himself pro se in this matter. He indicated in his emails that he has no intention of working in the cannabis industry in the state of Nevada in the foreseeable future, and has not been a resident of Nevada since July 2021. Prior to filing an answer, the parties agreed to resolve the matter that was mutually agreeable to respondent, the CCB staff, and the Attorney General's office. The parties agreed to a stay of the disciplinary process while the CCB considered approval of the settlement agreement before you. Events at issue in the complaint occurred at the Essence Tropicana dispensary, where respondent was previously employed in their drive-thru. In late April 2021, Essence Tropicana reported to CCB that a person under 21 years of age had attempted to purchase cannabis inside its dispensary. So it undertook a further investigation and covered 3 prior instances of this person successfully purchasing cannabis through their drive-thru. One of these instances was respondent's sale of cannabis that occurred on or about March 20th, 2021, as outlined in the complaint. The underage person was 20 years, 10 months, and 14 days old. Of note, the CCB settled with Essence Tropicana separately regarding this underage sales, as memorialized in the settlement agreement in case number 20221-50. As set forth in the proposed settlement agreement to resolve this matter, respondent admitted to 1 Category 2 violation for failing to verify the underage person's age and allowing an underage person to purchase cannabis. Respondent agreed to the revocation of his agent cards for a 4-year period from the date the CCB approves the stipulation in order and agrees to pay the civil penalty of $2,500 within the 4-year revocation period. If respondent fails to pay the civil penalty of $2,500 within the 4-year revocation period, then his agent registration cards will be revoked for 9 years and 11 months in consideration for his admitted violations. At the end of the 4-year or 9-year and 11-month revocation period, whichever is applicable, respondent may request reinstatement of his cannabis establishment agent cards from the CCB. Accordingly, the Attorney General recommends and requests that the CCB approve the settlement agreement. I'm available for any questions as Mr. Rodriguez via Zoom.
Any questions by any board members?
I have a couple questions. Is the fine 25,000 or 2,500? Because I think I thought it said 25,000 in the.
It's 2,500.
Oh, okay. So on page 6, it says 25,000.
I believe that was.
Oh, okay. So my other question is, was it Mr. Rodriguez that was selling multiple times?
He's one of the 3 instances. So he just
Okay.
one.
So the other instances aren't related to him.
No, and those are being handled separately through separate complaints.
Okay, thanks.
Is Mr. Rodriguez present this morning? We note that he was acting in pro se, acting on his own behalf without counsel. We note that he's not present for the record. This is Chair Douglas.
I am present today. It's Eric
Thank you.
Rodriguez.
All right. Mr. Rodriguez, anything you'd like to add at this point?
No, sir.
And you're aware of what was stated on page 3 of the agreement, that you agreed to revocation of your cannabis establishment agent registration card, and that prior and existing for 4-year period, you have the ability to pay a civil penalty of $2,500. And if you do that, then there's possible reinstatement. If not, your license would be revoked for a period of 9 years and 11 months. Do you understand that, sir?
Correct. I do. Thank you.
All right. Unless there's any further discussion, if we can have the vote to accept the settlement agreement. Can we have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Nylander. I would move for approval of the settlement agreement in item 4A as reflected on the agenda.
Thank you. We have
This
a
is
motion.
Member Merritt. I will second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the settlement agreement, please so state.
Aye.
Aye.
Carried by the 4 board members. Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, good luck.
Thank you.
That moves us to item number 4B, Cannabis Compliance Board versus GB Science, NOPA LLC, case number 2022-70.
Thank you, Chair. L. Christopher Rath for the record. The next 3 settlement agreements are somewhat interrelated. They pertain to 2 TOI transactions for 3 different licensees, which originally held common ownership. They're all GB Sciences entities. Attorney Adam Filton is here representing all 3 licensees and will be available to answer any of the board's questions. I'll note that none of these 3 settlement agreements involve a complaint, as the parties agreed to resolve the regulatory violations with settlement agreements, waiving the filing and service of formal complaints. I will go through each of these separately, but I'll try not to be too repetitious, so there'll be a little bit more detail in the first one. So under agenda item 4B, we have a case of CCB versus GB Sciences NOPA, case number 2022-70. First of all, as you recall from the December 14, 2021 CCB meeting, GB Sciences Incorporated submitted 2 TOI requests to transfer ownership of its licenses to 2 different companies. The CCB approved the transfer of interest requests and referred the areas of concern back to the CCB staff and the Attorney General's office to see whether the regulatory violations found during the TOI investigations could be resolved. We were able to resolve these issues for all 3 companies through the settlement agreements. As for agenda item 4B, the new owner of GB Sciences NOPA is ABCNV LLC. GB Sciences NOPA holds the medical and adult use license for a cultivation facility. Identification numbers are C120 and RC120. The TOI investigation uncovered that GB Sciences NOPA had multiple late filed tax returns. They were 0 returns, but the law still required them to be filed. As indicated in the settlement agreement, respondent admitted to 3 Category 5 violations for failing to submit monthly tax reports and agreed to accept a formal warning for its first Category 5 violation and pay a $7,500 civil penalty within 30 days of approval of the agreement. Paragraph 21 of this settlement agreement summarizes respondents' plan of correction, which the CCP staff has reviewed and approved. In summary, this respondent discharged its bookkeeper, hired a new bookkeeper. Respondent also updated its standard operating procedures to require the new bookkeeper and the general manager to work together and be responsible for all tax filings and payments. In addition, calendar reminders have been instituted for both the bookkeeper and general manager to remind them for the deadlines for tax reports each month, and there will be weekly consultations with the accounts payable accountant to ensure the funds are available for tax payments. CCP staff agrees that these admitted violations, the civil penalty, the formal warning, and the corrective action appropriately address their areas of concern, and that the licensee has been fully advised about and understands the gravity of these issues. As a result, the Attorney General does recommend and request the CCB approve this settlement agreement.
Thank you. Questions by the board as to what they've heard thus far?
I have none.
Thank you. Counsel, any representations you wish to make on behalf of your client?
No, we'd just like to thank staff and counsel for working with us through this. We believe it's a fair settlement and resolution. And as counsel stated, these are new owners that came in and agreed to take on these responsibilities and update everything and move forward. That's true for all three of them. So my comments would be the same for all three.
We understand that. We seem to be trying to work through the understanding that the reporting of taxes is a very important issue. The reporting, there is zero in some cases. We have three matters before us, the B, C, and D, with the penalties, $7,500 for B, $7,500 for C, and as to D, two penalties, one is $7,500, another for $40,000, for a total of $47,000. There are terms in there and conditions as to payment. There was also important. New ownership has provided us with information as a correction policy to make sure this does not occur in the future, and we wish them good luck, and hopefully this will be the last time we see you for this kind of. Having said, do we have any other questions to ask?
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Nylander. I do have one quick question for Mr. Fulton. If you could just please affirm that the corrective actions plan in place under each of the three agreements is in compliance presently as we're sitting.
This is Attorney Fulton for the record, and that is correct.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else by the board members, Chair Douglas, if we can have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move.
There's a lag.
Go ahead, Member Dredd. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Member Dredd, I move to approve agenda item 4B, the settlement agreement between the board and GB Sciences NOPA LLC.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Member Nylander, I would second.
We have a motion. We have a second for approval of all three settlement items. If we can have our vote, please.
Aye.
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 All board members are affirmative. The motion carries. Thank the licensee and counsel for their cooperation as this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, we can move on to item 4C. I think we're going to vote on them separately, and I'll try not to overlap with what I've already said.
We actually took, if I understood the motion. Okay.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
So, I'll try to be brief on some of these. So 4C, again, is this one's for GB Sciences, Las Vegas, case number 2022-75. Same basic background. This new owner is AJE Management LLC. Similarly, they had multiple late filed tax returns, and these ones were zero returns. And again, they similar plan of correction. They're going to attempt to actually file their tax returns early, well before the deadline, and put in new procedures in place for that. And this one also has an admission to three Category 5 violations with a payment of a $7,500 civil penalty. If you have any questions about that for me or council, I'm happy to answer them. And then we'll take D last because that has a few differences as well. Thank you.
Members of the board, any questions of our attorney as to this matter? And council, any additional representations, or you stand?
Stan, thank you.
Thank you. With that, if we can have a motion, unless we have any additional questions, as to item C.
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Nylander. I would move for approval of the settlement agreement in item 4C as reflected on the agenda.
Thank you.
This is Member Merritt. I will second it.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any additional discussion? Thus, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Carries unanimously. That moves us to item number D, Cannabis Compliance Board versus CV Sciences Nevada LLC, case number 2022-76.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, L. Christopher Rath once again. This licensee is GB Sciences Nevada. This also has the new owner, AJE Management LLC. So their plan of correction is going to be the same as the last one. On this one, they had multiple late tax reports with zero returns, and there's a $7,500 civil penalty on this one. And in addition, there were multiple late returns with payments due. It's my understanding they are now up to date, but some of these payments were very late, some of them even up to a year. Hence the admission to 2 Category 3 violations in addition for unintentionally failing to pay taxes to the Department of Taxation and a civil penalty of $40,000. So the total civil penalty on this one is $47,500. This one does involve a payment plan of equal installments over an 8-month time period. As with other payment plan cases you've seen, there are significant penalties for late payments of any of these installments. And for that, I'll open it to any questions of myself or council.
Any questions of our council? Is any statement by a representative?
I stand.
Thank you. Board members, any questions if anyone wishes to ask? And likewise, as indicated below, prior compliance plan has been submitted. Also, no payment plan that's attached to this. If we have questions of either the licensing attorney or our staff.
I don't know if this is a question, Mr. Chairman. This is Mr. Member Nylander, but it does appear that this is consistent with prior actions we've taken where if there's a zero tax liability, we've not taken action in some cases if it was just a one-off problem. But if it's been sort of a continuous problem, we've taken action and, assuming there's corrective measures in place to, and a sort of a minor fine, but when there's been actual taxes due. So in this instance, we have the 40,000 additional penalty, and I think that's appropriate. But Mr. Rath, I want to make sure that I want to be consistent with these, and I know they're all different in some way, especially the facts. But is that a fair summation of sort of trying to make sure the board is being consistent on these matters?
Yes, Member Nylander, that is correct. For all 3 of these, there were some zero returns, and those civil penalties were minor. But there's actually a great deal of number of late payments here and significant amounts of money, which we consider to be much more serious than late returns with zero returns.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Anyone else wish to raise comment or question? If not, if we can have a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Nylander. I would move for approval of item number 4D, approval of the settlement agreement as reflected on the agenda.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
This is Member Merritt. I would second.
We have a motion for approval. We have a second as to that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
There's no additional.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously. All four members. Thank you very much and good luck, and thank you for getting this resolved.
Thank you very much.
That moves us to item number 5, request for transfers of interest. First matter up is THC Nevada LLC, TOI number 21038, C030, RC030. Possible action. If we can have the licensee come forward and counsel.
Good morning, Chair Douglas, Member Merritt, Member Nylander, and Member Durrett. For the record, I'm David Staley, Division Chief of Investigations for the CCB. I'm here to present agenda item number 5, which consists of 4 transfer of interest applications and an informational item regarding a TOI from the February agenda. Item A is a TOI application for THC Nevada LLC or THC Nevada. TOI number 21038 requests approval for various internal and external transfers, resulting in founding member Danny Thomas leaving the company. Alan Pule is transferring a percentage of his membership to various family members for estate planning, and the transfer of Seamus Brennan's ownership to his wife, Heather Brennan, after his passing. In addition, THC Nevada has requested waivers pursuant to NCCR 5.112 and 5.125 of the requirements of NCCR 5.110 regarding a review of all owners. THC Nevada has adequately addressed the items required in NCCR 5.112 and 5.125 to allow the board to approve such waivers. Staff suggests that if approved, the board limit THC Nevada's 5.112 and 5.125 waivers to expire on such agenda date as THC Nevada's next TOI application is heard. Staff identified areas of concern with TOI number 21038 because THC Nevada filed late or incomplete tax returns with the Nevada Department of Taxation 6 times during the last 3 years. CCB staff have provided potential options for board consideration to proceed with TOI number 21038. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Amy Sugden, Alan Pilas, and Nick Pilas are available to address your questions, any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Douglas, I'll turn this item back to you.
Thank you. Before we proceed to our licensee and their counsel, any questions by board members? There's no questions at this point. We will hear from our counsel and our licensee. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Nick Puliz. I'm the general manager of THC Nevada. I'd like to thank the CCB staff for working with us so closely and quickly in getting this TOI transferred. Request put before you guys. And just to note that even prior to this transfer and subsequent to the transfer, THC Nevada is going to remain 100% Nevada owned. Every member resides in, pays taxes in Nevada, in the great state of Nevada.
Good morning, and this is Amy Sugden. I'm just here along as counsel to answer any questions you guys may have about this transfer. I appreciate Chief Staley's summary, and I think Mr. Pulitz as well is able to address any of the questions about the 6 tax incidents. I know we'll be handling that moving forward as well, but I know since it was raised, we're here if there's any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions by the board?
This is Member Nylander. If you could just maybe give us a little more color on what you've done to make sure these returns will be filed on time in the future.
But of course, yes. Obviously, most majorities are older, so we did have 2 previous bookkeepers that I've had to replace, and we're on a new one. And I have had my general counsel mentor them, and I personally am going to verify that all the returns are filed at least a week in advance in case there's any issues that pop up that force me to file it late. So that's the main course of action that I'm going to take is.
Okay. And some of these were filed under the Department of Taxation's jurisdiction previously, and I guess they waived the interest and penalties.
Correct. Because the one of them was COVID related. We had to pay our taxes by cash, and you guys during COVID there was a limited staff, and I called in advance to try to get an appointment to pay the cash payment, and they didn't have anyone to accept it, and so they said, "Well, you're just going to have to pay it late." And then when I requested for waiver of penalties and interest, they did waive it them because they realized that it was impossible for me to get them the cash, and I didn't have a bank account at that time.
Thank you.
Any other questions by members? Do any of our board members have an emotion?
This is Member Merritt. I move to approve the request for transfer of interest for THC Nevada LLC.
And is that without a recommendation or any settlement of the outstanding issues as to taxes? Or is that referring it back to staff, sit down and see if that can be negotiated this time?
Mr. Chairman, if I might make a comment on the motion at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have no problem approving the transfer right now. But I guess I'd like to have the Attorney General's office look at the violations for failed tax return filings and to make sure we're being consistent with the actions we've taken previously in disciplinary matters. And I'm not suggesting that I think a disciplinary matter is in order here, and I don't want to hold up the transaction at all. This licensee had a number of things happen, including deaths in families among the owners and other matters related to COVID. And so I certainly don't want to hold up the transaction, but I do want to make sure we're consistent as much as we can be, because all these cases are different in the outcomes of these disciplinary actions, if there are any. So I would suggest that if Member Merritt's willing to amend her motion just to allow the transfer to occur, but have the Attorney General's office look further into, with our staff, look further into the tax-related apparent violations and see if that rises to the level that there would be some sort of disciplinary action. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Member Merritt, do you accept?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm willing to amend my motion, based on the statements that was made by Member Dennis.
For referral at this time, approval of the
Chair,
TOI, and referral as to consideration of the violations.
Chair Douglas, David Staley for the record. I wanted to remind the board that they also have applications for waivers of 5.
And that should be part of the motion, correct?
David Staley for the record. Yes, sir.
Member Merritt, do you accept those also? The conditions, waiver? Member Merritt, Mr. Staley
Yes,
stated some.
Yes, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear you.
Okay. The adding on of the conditions as outlined by Mr. Staley, the waiver of those conditions.
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have a second as to our now completed motion?
Member Nylander, I would second.
We have a motion, we have a second. If there's no additional discussion, please say aye as affirmative.
Aye.
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 Aye. Carries unanimously. So the TOI, transfer of interest, goes forward, and staff will contact you as to the other item.
Thank you so much, Chair. We really
Thank you.
appreciate your
I'm
time.
glad this is kind of finally coming to an end.
Thank you to the board.
That would take us to THC Production LLC, TOI number 21 037 P017 and RP 017 Imperial Enterprises LLC for possible action. Do we have representatives?
Chair Douglas, David Staley for the record and for members. Item B is the TOI application for THC Production LLC or THC Production. The prior TOI involved THC Nevada, who is also a 51% owner of THC Production. TOI number 21-00037 was filed by THC Production, requesting approvals for various internal restructuring of one of its members and the sale of THC Nevada's ownership, 1% to the existing member and 50% to new investors, Zachary Silva and Andres Gutierrez. The resulting membership structure will be 50% by existing member Experience Premium Cannabis LLC and 50% by Silva and Gutierrez through Imperial Enterprises LLC. In addition, THC Production has requested waivers pursuant to 5.112 and 5.125 of the requirements of NCCR 5.110 regarding a review of all owners. THC Production has adequately addressed the items required in NCCR's 5.112 and 5.125 to allow the board to approve such waivers. Staff suggests that if approved, the board limit THC Production's 5.112 and 5.125 waivers to expire on such agenda date as THC Production's next TOI application is heard. Staff identified areas of concern with TOI number 21-00037 because THC Production filed late or incomplete tax returns with the Nevada Department of Taxation 9 times during the last 3 years. CCB staff have provided potential options for the board's consideration to proceed with this TOI. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Amy Sugden, Rick Steerwalt, Richard Cunningham, Zachary Silva, and Stephanie Magurno are available to address any questions that you may have as well. With that, Chair Douglas, I'll turn this item back to you.
Thank you. We can have representations and comments from the licensing representative.
Richard Cunningham for Richard Steerwalt and Experience Premium Cannabis.
Thank you.
Stephanie Magurno, Magurno.
Thank you.
Amy Sugden again representing THC Nevada, the transfer of the 51% to Imperial as well as EPC. Thank you.
Any comments that you would like to make as to the past tax issues?
Yes, Chair. We now have a new bookkeeper in place, and Ms. Magurno is the CCO. She has a calendar and is working with that bookkeeper to make sure that this does not happen again. There was the total amount of tax due was $650. No penalties and interest were imposed by the Department of Taxation, but we are striving to make sure that it is followed and properly filed.
I could add that also these were use tax returns. THC Production does not collect or remit sales tax as a manufacturing wholesaler. So these were voluntary use tax returns, i.e. reporting on purchases that we made on which we did not pay sales tax and remitting the sales tax for those items we purchased to the state.
Thank you. Questions by other board members? Comments? For the record, then I would move for approval of the TOI. I additionally would refer this to our attorney staff for consideration of the tax issue, whether or not it's appropriate to be consistent. Mr. Staley, you had some other conditions we should put on until the next licensing period?
Yes, sir. Those are the, David Staley for the record. Chair Douglas, those would be the standard conditions dealing with the waivers of 5110.
Thank you. That would be my motion. Have a second.
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Nylander. I second the motion.
Moved and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Matter carries unanimously. Thank you very much, and staff will contact you.
Thank you.
TOI is. That moves us to item number C, CSNLV LLC as a TOI number 21065, C180, RC180, P113, RP113 for possible action.
Chair Douglas, members of the board, for the record, I'm David Staley, Chief of Investigations. Item C is a TOI application for CSNLV LLC, or CSNLV. TOI number 21065 requests approval for Barbara Jean Rubin and Shayna Indig to each receive 50% CSNLV after the death of Charles Indig on December 1st of 2021. Staff identified areas of concern with TOI 21065 because CSNLV filed later incomplete tax returns with the Nevada Department of Taxation 26 times during the last 3 years. CCB staff have provided potential options for the board's consideration to proceed with TOI number 21065. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Barbara Jean Rudin, Shayna Indig, John Savage, Dotan Melick, and Kimberly Maxton Rushton are present today to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Douglas, I'll turn this item back to you. I'm sorry, Christopher Rath.
Thank you, board members. Christopher Rath for the record. In addition to Mr. Staley's presentation, I also wanted to bring to the board's attention that on Friday, March 18, 2022, Ms. Kimberly Rushton, who is counsel for the TOI applicant transferees, sent a letter to the CCB's executive director requesting that if this TOI is approved, that the board also vote to terminate the placement of the receiver over CSNLV contingent on approval of the court that had appointed him. Just to remind you, the board's order placing Mr. Melick as receiver at page 4 states, quote, "The receiver shall remain in place until the CCB has approved his removal. CSNLV may apply to the CCB to remove the receiver at any time, but the CCB must approve removal by a majority vote," close quote. With the letter that was sent on March 18th, the applicants for the TOI approval have basically made that application for removal of the receiver contingent on the court's approval of the receiver's discharge. As this is in connection with the TOI approval pursuant to NRS Chapter 241. If the board does approve the TOI, it may then decide to vote on this request today. And if it does vote, our position is the appropriate motion would be to vote on the request for removal, and for that removal to be contingent and effective only on the court's subsequent approval to discharge the receiver.
Ms. Maxon, representation to your client.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board, Director Climas. For the record, I'm Kimberly Maxim Rushton, appearing on behalf of CSNLV. Joining me today are the applicant transferees, Ms. Barbara Jean Rubin and Ms. Shayna Indig. Also, as indicated, the receiver, Mr. Dotan Malik, is here, as well as his counsel, John Savage. Members of the board, this, as your records reflect, CSNLV is a boutique family-run business. And if Barbara and Shayna are approved today, they intend to continue that operation in the spirit of Mr. Indig. For purposes of background, I'll let you know that both Barbara and Shayna moved here in 2015. They maintain a residence here. Barbara's professional background includes both banking as well as hotel management, whereas Shayna is a junior at UNLV, having transferred here from NYU to be a part of the family business. We recognize the concerns that were raised by Chief Staley relative to the delinquent tax returns. Note the fact that they were all zero tax returns, understand the importance of this to the board, and submit to you that they have adopted an internal corrective action plan whereby both owners, if approved, have particulars on their calendars relative to the due dates specific to the tax returns. And in addition to that, I will be working with them throughout the process to ensure that they understand that going forward, that they cannot have the delinquent tax returns. I note in your records that there are extenuating circumstances for the reason why those tax returns were late filed, and also the fact that all of the tax returns that did include a payment were timely filed. Recognizing that the most important thing to an administrative body when considering licensing is the suitability of the individuals and their commitment to compliance, I would state affirmatively that both Shayna and Barbara have undertaken great efforts to familiarize themselves with Nevada's cannabis laws, as well as the CCB specific regulatory obligations. And that I would submit is demonstrative of their commitment to compliance and what I assure you will be their key to success. And with that, Chairman Douglas, my clients and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have and also be responsive to the specific requests relative to the receiver.
Thank you. With that, we're taking questions. Statement by receiver or counsel for receiver.
Morning, Chair Douglas, members of the board, John Savage on behalf of Dotan Malik, the receiver over CSNLV. I believe Mr. Rath's proposal is consistent with the receivership order. Paragraph 29 does require a discharge by the court with approval of the CCB, and we are working with counsel on submitting a motion to the court if this application is approved, possibly today, but certainly this week, and we'd be requesting here in short time and proceed with discharges expeditiously as possible.
Thank you. Board members, any questions that you have?
I have one or two questions. And it's probably in here and I just forgot. Does Ms. Rubin and Ms. Indig have, do they have agent cards?
No. Okay. In response to your question, Kimberly Maxim Rushton, member Durrett, they do not have agent cards. They had previously, Ms. Rubin had applied for one in October of 2021. It had not been processed yet. And then upon approval of this, then they will be issued the owner agent registration cards, okay, which then satisfies the statutory criteria that necessitated the receiver. As noted, the request that we've made today is simply for you to approve so that the court may then move forward. And the court's order specifically does state that. So my clients acknowledge the fact that they cannot, that the termination of the receiver will not occur until the court approval, or the court has approved the motion to discharge. But in the interim, what we'd ask for is so as to continue the momentum with getting them in place as the owners, that you acknowledge and authorize the discharge of the receiver.
One other question, maybe it's too small for this to occur, but do they have a assistance in management, somebody with experience in cannabis? Have they retained somebody? Are they working with somebody?
In response to your question, member Durrett, Kimberly Maxim Rushton, The CSNLV, which is otherwise known as Oro Verde, has been in operation since 2018 and has had a very seasoned general manager in place that continues. It's a small operation, limited number of employees, but my clients have absolute confidence in the general manager. And as I noted, he is seasoned and had come from another cultivation site. So with that in mind, they feel that they are comfortable moving forward with the operations and with his expertise.
Thank you.
Any other member of the board have questions they wish to ask?
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Nylander. I just have a quick question of Ms. Rubin.
Yes.
Good morning, Ms. Rubin.
Good morning.
If you just give us a little bit of a sort of summary of how you see the business going in the future.
Take a deep breath and take your time.
It's a family business. We've been involved in family businesses our whole life. We're looking forward to having everything in compliance, catering, to make sure our product is clean and safe for everyone. And just want to keep Charlie's vision going. With our daughter, they were supposed to do this together. That's where the C and the S come from. Charlie and Shayna. And Shayna's birthday, she turned 21 on December 6th. And he was looking forward to bringing her in there to start this with her, this venture. So now it is on me to bring her through this and follow his vision to get this for her so that she can go forward with this. And we want to have
Thank you.
Suffice it to say, we certainly understand, and my clients have been diligent in understanding the importance of compliance going forward, and also the business acumen necessary to run a cannabis establishment in Nevada.
Other questions?
Thank you, Ms. Rubin. And I know it's a difficult time, and I certainly don't mean to have my question be anything negative at all. I'm very impressed with your background.
I didn't take that at all from you.
And I also wanted to comment that your business plan that you submitted with your partner is very good. It's one that I was impressed with, and I look forward to having you continue the family business. It's a great thing to see that in this industry. It's something we haven't seen a lot of, and it's a very welcome thing for me.
Thank you. That's why we've gone slow and kept it in family. We didn't want to go big and have many other members involved.
Thank you.
Other board members wish to weigh in?
I think it's very impressive that Shayna came out here from NYU, and I'd like to encourage her to check out the law school when she has time.
She is thinking of that.
Having said that, Chair Douglas, for the record, it looks like this is in order, various requests. I am still a little concerned about the taxes, and you note that they came current recently of the outstanding taxes. So it's an issue, but it's not the issue it once was. I am still a little concerned. I appreciate that you have an individual who's been there for continuity and whatnot. and that the family has also noted that they will take the ultimate responsibility that taxes are duly paid timely in the future. With that, I guess it's a multiple-part motion that I would make for approval of the TOI request, the transfers of interest, that have gone through a number of hoops to get there, but the approval for that. Additionally, that the receiver be allowed to terminate it upon approval by the district court as set forth there, and them noting that certain formalities, as they've stated, have to be done before that can occur. Additionally, the matter still needs to be referred to our council as the tax issue, to see if anything else is appropriate or not. And do we have any additional, Mr. Staley, that needs to be added to that?
Chair Douglas, David Staley for the record. No, sir.
That would be my motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Nylander. I'm prepared to second the motion, but I have just wanted to get your thoughts on us going ahead of the court, even conditionally. Is that something that I just want to make sure we're not going to offend the court by sort of jumping first, even if it's conditional?
I would hate to have to, based upon the trials and tribulations this licensee has been through trying to get this matter resolved in an expeditious fashion, and there is no opposition by our receiver, understanding that the court was looking for our approval if everything was in order. I think it would not offend the district court and Judge Williams in this case, understanding that he is still make sure that they meet requirements set forth, and will trust his judgment in this case.
And thank you for that. And I would second the motion and comment that wish the best of luck for this licensee and this family business, and that although I think it's consistent for us to have the AG's office and staff look at the tax things, I see this as very different from the other cases we've seen, because you had a family member who became ill, and a lot of other things happened. And so I don't see the tax issue as being something, but I'll leave that up to the Attorney General's office and staff to decide. But personally, my view is that I don't see any sort of willful or negligent violation here based on the circumstances.
Thank you. With that, unless there's anything else anyone wishes to add or question, if we can have a vote for approval of the motion.
Aye.
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 We have lost Member Merritt this time. We still have 3 members for our quorum, so the matter is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Douglas. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Agent Samrock for her professionalism during this investigative process. She really well represented the state of Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you. That moves us to item number D, Premium Produce LLC, TOI number 18080C033, RC033, P038, and RP038 for possible action.
Chair Douglas, members of the board, David Staley for the record. Item D is the TOI application for Premium Produce LLC, or Premium Produce. TOI number 18080 was filed by Premium Produce requesting approval for existing members Priscilla Vilchis and Sharon Poon to sell a portion of their membership, totaling 15%, to new investor Alejandro Gonzalez Morales. In addition, Premium Produce has requested a waiver pursuant to 5.125 of the requirements of NCCR 5.110 regarding a review of owners related to transfers of under 5%. Premium Produce has adequately addressed the items required in NCCR 5.125 to allow the board to approve such waivers. Staff suggests that if approved, the board limit Premium Produce's 5.125 waiver to expire on such agenda date as Premium Produce's next TOI application is heard. Staff identified areas of concern with TOI 18080 because Premium Produce filed late or incomplete tax returns with the Nevada Department of Taxation 37 times during the last 3 years. In addition, the Nevada Department of Taxation was required to file tax lien against Premium Produce on May 10th, 2021 for $98,481, which was released after payment on September 17th of 2021. Additionally, Premium Produce did not pay its tax liabilities for October, November, and December of 2021 until it paid the accumulated amount of $140,653.33 on February 23rd of 2022. Premium Produce is currently in compliance with tax requirements. An additional area of concern was identified with 2% minority owner Steven Silverman, who has been charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and conspiracy to engage in the unlawful distribution of prescription medication in the United States District Court for the Northern District of California. Silverman pled not guilty to the charges, and his trial date is set for June 13 of 2022. CCB staff have provided potential options for board's consideration to proceed with TOI 18080. I am available for any questions, and my understanding that Amanda Connor, Alejandro Gonzalez Morales, Priscilla Vilchis, and Stephen Silverman are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Douglas, I'll turn this item back to you.
Thank you. Council representation.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Amanda Connor on behalf of Premium Produce. I have with me my law partner, Derek Connor, who is their point of contact. Also with me today in person is Priscilla Vilchis. She is the majority member and the manager of Premium Produce. Via Zoom, we have the proposed member, Mr. Gonzalez Morales. And also via Zoom is Mr. Steven Silverman, the 2% minority member.
With that, you've heard the representations that were provided by our staff as to this matter. Any comments for the record you wish to make?
Yes, Chairman. Again, Amanda Connor for the record. First, with regards to the pending case related to Mr. Silverman, he is here today in attendance pursuant to the request of staff. But what I would say on behalf of the company is we understand the recommendation of condition on the license that staff has placed, that if there does turn out to be a guilty verdict, that Premium Produce would immediately take actions to remove him as a member. And the company is in agreement with the proposed condition related to that pending case. With regards to the late tax return payments, my client would first like to note that as stated by Mr. Staley, it is current on its tax payments. It has taken several steps to work to become in compliance, including hiring a new bookkeeper who started in training last week, and yesterday was the first full official day for that bookkeeper. Ms. Vilchis, who unfortunately last year was sick and hospitalized for several months, is now taking a more active role and oversight into the tax payments, and has asked our firm to also help with oversight and compliance of the tax returns. So we do think with those steps that they are making, that they will be timely with their tax payments moving forward. In fact, I would note they already have an appointment made. They had reached out and made that appointment for March 25th to pay all February taxes. So it will be paid a week prior to the due date. But we are happy to address any questions the board may have. We would ask that if the board has concerns regarding the tax payments, like has been done with other licensees, we'd ask that that be referred to the AG's office for discussion.
Thank you. With that, questions or comments by board members?
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Nylander. Just have a question for Mr. Morales, if he's on the call at all.
Miss.
I believe he's muted. But
Yes,
he is
hi.
muted. There he is.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just wanted to kind of get what your vision is for the company going forward. You're purchasing essentially a large interest from the existing shareholders. And how do you see that going?
You know what? Now that hopefully I become the 15% owner, again, I'm looking to help out a little bit more in the day-to-day business, being in compliance with the board, and basically helping manage. I have a medical equipment company that I've been running for 10, 12 years, and it's been thankfully pretty successful. And I'm trying to get my expertise over to premium produce to try to, again, make it a little bit more efficient and better in a way where we're compliant with everything that's going on with the board and stuff.
Okay, so you're going to be more involved in day-to-day ops?
Exactly.
Okay, and try to take what you've learned from the medical side and bring that over to the business?
Try to make it, try to bring it over to the cannabis industry and basically help out Priscilla Vilches with the day-to-day operations.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up on that question. Are we going to have any changes in the local management in light of that, in terms of who is going to physically be in charge of the local operation?
Hello, how are you? Alex Gonzalez comes up to Las Vegas 3 days out of the week. So when he says he's going to be here day to day, he will be. Last year, he also looked at a couple houses to become a Nevada resident as well. So he's very strongly committed.
If you'd restate your name so I'll record it.
My name is Priscilla Vilches, and I'm the CEO of Premium Produce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment that I think one of the conditions should include not just that Mr. Silverman report to the CCB the outcome of his case in San Francisco, but that the company be responsible for reporting it if for some reason he doesn't.
With that being said, unless there are additional questions, someone would like to put a motion together.
Member Durrett, for the record, I move to approve the transfer with the understanding that the case will be referred back to the AG to look into any potential violations that would potentially come back to the board, with the proposed conditions being that the request for waivers pursuant to NCCR 5.125 is granted. And yeah, okay, so that would be granted, and that Mr. Silverman would be responsible for reporting back to the CCB any outcome whatsoever of his case in San Francisco, and that Premium Produce LLC also report back once that case is concluded, which means keeping on top of it, checking back every once in a while, and that the condition for the waiver would set to expire at the next time a TOI application is heard.
Mr. Staley, does that check the boxes?
If Member Durrett, if you can please refer to page 14 of the investigative report, we did expand that second condition for Mr. Silverman.
Okay, yeah,
requiring,
right, yeah, okay. So
if you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the condition would also entail that if Mr. Silverman is found guilty, of the charges that Premium Produce LLC would immediately place his interest in escrow in an restricted account pending CCB board action on a potential transfer of his interest, depending on what charges he was found guilty of in the case of him being found guilty.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second to that?
Member Nylander, I would second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion? With that, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you and good luck and welcome to Nevada.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to Mr. Staley for all his work on this.
That moves us to item E, an informational memo as to New Leaf and Juicy TOI approval during the February 2022 meeting as a TOI 21014, 2100027. There's some correction action that needs to be taken, and we need to take a short recess. So we will be in recess for a few minutes, about 5 minutes. Shame on you, you didn't take Good morning.
Good morning, Justin. How are you?
How are you?
Good. Nice to see you. Everything good here?
Yes.
Things are straightening out. Time has a way of doing that, right?
I'm Biff Leonard. I keep sending you those monthly reports. Nice to meet you.
I get it.
All right, I know you.
How's everything going?
Oh, terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. Every time we turn around, we find something else. This Howard Meisel just he was stealing money, not filing returns, not doing anything. So we're cleaning it up.
Right. It's a huge task. I knew it would be. I don't know if you did, but I did.
I didn't. I thought it was going to be a 1 month, 2 month deal. Here we are, just neck deep.
You know more about cannabis?
I do. I do.
So do we all.
Give me teeth. Shake. Yeah. Popcorn.
Thanksgiving would be a hit. Obviously.
Never thought I would be in this business.
Right. It's fascinating.
Navy SEAL. We don't do this kind of stuff.
No, it's every week it's something new.
We had a reunion last August and all the SEALs still around. What are you doing, Biff?
Let me tell you.
Anyway, I just wanted to introduce myself to you.
Absolutely great. Good to see you. Good luck. We needed a quorum. Sorry.
No, but I thought it was informational.
No, still need a quorum.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We're good. Like it.
Okay. Good.
The crowd like this.
On. Slightly public. I'll be fired.
It can be really demanding.
Probably went through all the comments. Some of them were pretty good. So
You know what? I read them through myself and I was like, how many sides?
Yeah.
And none of them I think were. I mean, actually, none of them are taking issue with a large portion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a single comment. Single on the application.
No, not really.
Maybe on reg 5. So just on the operations.
Some people there's a few little comments about trying to jump ahead in the system for the retail. That's about it. Like, sorry, you still have to fill out an application.
It's kind of they are. I mean, they still need to fill out.
Yeah,
it's not
that's
like
okay.
they're going to
We're going to be assumed that we already have a prospective license. No, you still have to fill the application like everybody else. That's when you become, for you guys, that's when you become prospective. So you fill it out. The 3.5 last.
Excuse me, are we back in session yet?
We're not back on.
Okay, this is the court reporter. It just went quiet for the last couple minutes. I could hear background noise and then nothing, so I didn't know if I got cut off from the meeting.
I muted the room because there's a lot of people in here, but we'll announce it when we come back on. Thank you.
We're back on the record at this time. We do have a quorum for a record. With that, we were under item 5E, an informational memo and information as the new leaf juicy. We have some little error correction as to how the business actually was going to be laid out from our last meeting.
Thank you, Chair Douglas, members of the board, David Staley for the record. Item E is a memorandum to the board explaining a clerical error in TOIs 21014 and 2100027 for Jushi Holdings, Inc. It was heard by the board at its February 2022 agenda. In that item, the board approved the transfer of various New Leaf Inc. or New Leaf licenses from various New Leaf subsidiaries to various Jushi subsidiaries. After the board had approved the TOIs, staff was informed that Jushi had acquired not just the New Leaf licenses, but had acquired the New Leaf subsidiaries that held such licenses as well. This informational item is to correct the record to show that the various licensees will not be held directly by Jushi NV Inc. and Jushi NV CLV Inc., but will be directly held by New Leaf Reno Productions LLC, New Leaf Sparks Cultivation LLC, New Leaf Clark Dispensary LLC, New Leaf Incline Dispensary LLC, and New Leaf CLV Dispensary LLC. CCB staff will update our records to reflect the correct ownership structure. With that, Chair Douglas, I'll turn this item back to you.
Any questions by the board as to the informational item? If we have none, we can then move to item number 6, request for consideration of approval of management services agreement as the ACC Enterprises LLC, C130 and R130, and Strata Growth LLC for possible action.
Chair Douglas, members of the board, for the record, I am David Staley. I'm here to present agenda item number 6, which consists of a request for approval of a management services agreement between ACC Enterprises LLC through William A. Leonard Jr., its receiver, and Strata Growth LLC. CCB staff have reviewed the agreement and found it appropriate. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Adam Fulton, Darren Kessler, John Savage, Stephen Mack, and William Leonard Jr. are present today to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Douglas, I'll turn this item back to you.
If we can have representations, please.
Good morning, Adam Fulton on behalf of ACC.
Good morning, John Savage on behalf of Biff Leonard, the receiver for ACC.
Good morning, Stephen Mack on behalf of Strata Growth.
Good morning, Neil Tomlinson. I'm here on behalf of an intervener group in the underlying litigation, including Medicine Man Technologies. We had submitted a letter yesterday regarding this matter.
Thank you. This is Chair Douglas for the record. I guess from one standpoint, I'm in agreement that with this matter needing forward. However, I'm a little concerned as to the structure of the agreement. And the agreement basically stating that financially, the full profits would go to the parties coming in who are running the business. That's almost a backdoor approval at this point, which I don't really think is appropriate. There should be allowed to have reasonable return for doing work right now, and any profit should be put in holding until the matter is reconciled. But that's just my thoughts. I don't know if other board members have any issues or not. That's just a concern.
And Chair Douglas, David Staley for the record. If the board is interested, I can give you a little bit behind our analysis before submitting this to you for consideration.
See if any board member has any questions to then let you weigh in. All right, at this point, there's no other questions. Mr. Staley, if you'll give us an overview, and we'll turn it back to Mr. Fuller.
Thank you. Chair Douglas, members of the board, David Staley for the record. I will note that in our evaluation of this management services agreement, we understood that ACC is under receivership currently. In addition, I don't think it's cash flowing now as it is. The applicants explained that it is one of the 3 largest employers for the Pahrump area. So in our consideration, we felt it was important to recognize that this entity provides a great deal of employment for the residents of that area. In addition, the management services contract requires that all taxes and operating expenses are paid first. Subsequent to that, all receiver-related expenses are paid for. And this MSA is in conjunction with a proposed TOI. With the death of the sole or purportedly sole owner of ACC, it has been the board's practice to hold TOIs relative to the deaths of owners up to be able to handle them as quickly as possible to maintain the viability of the business. We anticipate that this TOI will be before the board for consideration within the next couple of months, and felt that even though the management service provider provided for all profits to be paid to the management company, that given their involvement in everything being paid first, it was appropriate. Now, what we have suggested in the past, if the board is more comfortable with that, is that any profits be placed in an escrow account under the control of ACC or the receiver in this case, and that those amounts would be released upon the board's approval and the completion of the transfer of interest to the new purchaser. That's an option that's available as well.
Having heard that, I'd like to hear from Mr. Fulton, our receiver, and the other party.
Thank you, Chairman and members. If you guys will recall, we were in front of you. It was kind of the first time in Nevada we had the situation where 100% owner had died, and we went through that whole process. And you all were phenomenal to work with, Chief Staley and Mr. Rath as well, to get through that process to make sure that those employees still had jobs out in Nye County. And so as we've worked through the process of determining how to move forward, this management agreement was a proposed solution to allow additional funding to come in to continue operations of the company. Without this management agreement, the company would be closed, shut down, and those employees would lose their jobs. This management agreement went before the court. It was approved by Judge Williams. And we're here today to ask that you approve the management agreement as it is today as well. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer. If not, I'll turn it over to the receiver or Mr. Savage.
Question is, if we move the alternate, how damaging would that be?
If you move, I'm sorry.
The second position that Mr. Staley said was a possibility.
I don't think it's going to really matter because the company is so far upside down. I don't know that there's going to be any profits anytime remotely soon. So honestly, I don't know that it really matters, but I'll let counsel for Strata address that issue. But my understanding is it literally won't matter.
Thank you. Yes. Well,
Who's the purchaser going to be? Is it going to be Strata?
Right now, there's a TOI that is pending in front of this board for transfer, but it's also pending approval. It's conditioned upon approval by the court. So it's kind of, it's a complex matter where the court is going to have to approve the sale of the company, and we're going to have to go through that whole process to work through that scenario. So it is, the answer is yes, kind of. It is, it is proposed, but it has some conditions attached to it.
And then one other question. How did this relationship come about? Just to kind of shed light and have some transparency, just receiverships in general. How did the relationship between the ACC and Strata come about? Because it was under receivership. So was it the receiver that kind of started floating around looking for a purchaser?
So there was, Mr. Kessler was an investor into the company and put a lot of money into the company as an investor. And as a result of that is interested in protecting his investment in the company.
And but it's kind of the receiver who's overseeing that purchase?
100%, yes, through court supervision, by the way.
Okay. And so the receiver is open to other people purchasing possibly, or maybe not now because it's already probably under contract, but there was an opportunity for other purchases, purchasers.
Yes, the receiver is open to doing what's in ACC's best interest, which again, the court is overseeing and supervising. So the ACC's mandate is again to do what's in ACC's best interest.
Thanks. I just, purposely I'm asking is just because like the chair commented, wanting to avoid kind of backdoor ways to become owners. So I want to make sure there's just some transparency and opportunities to avoid backdoor ways of becoming licensed.
I understand. Thank you, Member. I do believe that the court supervision of this matter is assisting with that process and making sure that it's done correctly. And that's why the receiver goes to the court for approval of anything that's done.
thank you.
Good morning. John Savage on behalf of the receiver for ACC. Many of the issues that the board is raising today were raised at the hearing last week by Judge Williams. We had a hearing for about an hour and a half on this management agreement and some other matters. Attorney Christopher Rath was present by video. To address Chair Douglas' concern about the profits, the management agreement was approved by the court, subject to any profits that are generated being essentially subject to a subsequent motion. So we would need to go back to court approval to pay any profits. Mr. Fulton's correct. Realistically, there likely are not going to be any profits. The reason this came about is because since the receiver has been appointed, ACC had been operating at a shortfall of about $125,000 per month. And so if somehow there's a profit, it probably would be a miracle and well-deserved to be paid. But again, we would have to go back to court to get that approval. And if that same condition would apply to the board, I don't think that would be problematic. The receiver would be holding those funds until we receive the appropriate approvals. And one of the complicating factors of this receivership has been that we initially expected, or the receiver initially expected, it just be in place for a short period of time, similar to the matter that was before the board earlier today, where there was a sole licensee who passed away and transfer of interest pending approval, and that was approved in about 2 months. And we were expecting something similar here. And due to various disputes, we weren't able to accomplish that. And so the sale actually was not part of the original plan for the receivership. It came about really almost as the only viable solution, because we've discovered this company is so insolvent that there really is not a viable path forward. And so the receiver is going to have to liquidate the company. And this management agreement really is just sort of a temporary Band-Aid or a bridge to get to that liquidation sale. And the court did make it very clear that it will be sold to the highest bidder. And so we had another complicating factor. We always are going to need CCB approval and court approval. And because of the timing concerns we have, we're just trying to move as fast as possible. So we submitted the only offer we had to the board. We negotiated very thoroughly at arm's length. And the receiver has had some other groups out there, including Medicine Men. I believe they were out in February for potential offers. And we have not received any other offers. We will be submitting a motion to the court this week seeking approval to liquidate the company. The asset purchase agreement is going to be part of that motion. And if time allows for additional bids, the court may allow that process to go forward. We're just trying to present the factual situation to the court and to let the court decide how it would like to move forward with this right now. The $125,000 shortfall, there were some questions at the hearing last week from Medicine Man whether we could cut certain operating expenses. And really, the company is running pretty bare bones right now. Some cuts were made. We're down to about $100,000 a month shortfall. Maybe you could get a little under that. I think we found about 2.5% miscellaneous expenses, about $11,000. Maybe we could cut down to $90,000. But the company can't survive without this management agreement and without funds being infused into the company. Last month, we weren't able to make the state tax payment on time. We had to request an extension. The manager has paid that since the court approved the management agreement. We have another same wholesale marijuana tax due at the end of this month. It's going to be about $100,000 or so. The company will not have funds to pay it without this management agreement. We have payroll coming up. We won't have sufficient funds. I think there's about $40,000 or so cash on hand right now. Payroll is going to be about 53. I think we still owe 35,000 for electric. And then again, state tax is about 100,000. So this really is the only viable solution to save the company. If we can't have somebody come in and take over paying these costs, we had previously informed the board, gave notice that we were planning to temporarily cease operations, and we had a motion with the court to approve that. And we withdrew that motion as essentially being moot after the court approved the management agreement, and the board also had to conditionally approve the agreement shortly after it was submitted. It seems that Medicine Man is now trying to essentially relitigate this issue in front of the board. My understanding is that the primary concerns initially were that the receiver maintains control of the company, which he does under this agreement. Ultimate supervision and authority remains with the receiver. He remains responsible. He's the only, well, I believe the proposed manager does have his agent card, but as the essentially responsibility for the company will remain with the receiver. And so I have not heard any concerns from Medicine Man about the suitability of the manager, which my understanding was really the primary focus of what the board would be investigating. I do understand the profit concern, but again, we are going to have to go back to court approval, so I don't think it'd be a problem to have the board approve any profits that come available, but realistically, it seems very unlikely that it would happen, and that would be a great problem for the company to have, I think. So with that, if the board has any questions for the receiver.
I'd like to hold our questions right now until we've heard from Medicine Man.
Thank you, Chair Douglas, members of the board, Director Climas. My name is Neil Tomlinson. Like I said, I've been retained just late last week as special counsel for the group of interveners, the Medicine Man interveners. The interveners have a arbitration award against ACC that I believe now exceeds $2 million with interest. So obviously, you know, we are interested in preserving the asset here. We want to make sure, and what I was retained to do is to make sure that everything is done correctly. Everything's done above board, make sure everything's scrutinized correctly so that this asset is preserved and can achieve the highest bid if that's what ends up happening here. So we're not looking to stop anything. In fact, all we're asking here today is that the board take no action. We don't believe there's any need for any action. We want to maintain the status quo. For one, the court's order has not even been entered yet on that management agreement. There obviously be, if the interveners so choose, and I'm not litigation counsel, but if the interveners so choose, they could file a motion for reconsideration of some issues within that management agreement. So none of that's finalized yet. And my understanding is the posture of this management agreement before the board is that it's already been conditionally approved. So that approval is in place. We've got a ruling from the bench to approve it. So status quo here is, I think, what needs to be maintained. I don't see a rush to have to give some final blessing to this management agreement because it's just not, it's not ripe for that right now, in my opinion. So we think another thing that needs to be looked at closely is there was a reference to, I believe Chief Staley said, purportedly the sole owner. I think there's some issues about what the ownership was, what the ownership is. We want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. We want to make sure that every employee, every owner, every required party has agent cards. Every TOI that needs to be submitted is submitted so that we can get this cleaned up once and for all and have this asset preserved so that it can achieve maximal value for everyone. And we believe that it's in everybody's best interest to do it this way. So all we're requesting is that no action be taken here today, allow the court to continue on with its process and then bring this back to the board at an appropriate time. We just think that it's not that time today.
Do you understand, just come in this picture, that a receiver has been appointed and appointed by the court, approved by this board, to take care of the day-to-day operations? The receiver has to figure out a vehicle to allow this, well, whatever the best situation is for the business to just sell a closed store or a store that's proceeding. The receiver has made representations. They think it's in the best interest for this type of agreement. I am quibbling about profits. They're indicating there may or may not be profits as the other issues. The receiver has to report back to us monthly to our investigation and our investigators that the business, as you outlined, cards are in place and all the other proper procedures are going on. That seems to be done. We seem to be quibbling about is trying to preserve the item right now for a possible sale overseas. We're concerned, this is a privileged license, and we're concerned with how it operates as a license in business. So that's the questions we're asking with that. So we've heard what you had to say. I don't know if the receiver wishes to make any statements, reference what's been stated, or counsel.
Chair Douglas, if I may.
Yes.
Just a couple clarification items. David Staley for the record. I'll note that Director Climas's letter approving the relationship set forth in the management agreement expires today at this meeting. In addition, the board's practice has been to approve the relationship between the two parties to the management agreement and not itself.
I understand that. You start talking about profits, that goes into what we normally see as a full licensing when you're saying total profitability is not a portion or not putting it in a trust situation or escrow. So that's what caught my eye. And so I'm trying to parse through for myself. Other board members may have a different view, but like to have this record made clear so we understand what's going on and hear the receiver who's trying to do what's best for really all the parties concerned.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Your Honor, and if I may address a couple things. One is, it was just addressed.
I'm sorry,
was
can I get
it's
your
a
name,
temporary-
please?
I'm sorry, Stephen Mack, on behalf of Strata Growth. This was a temporary approval, which expires today. So the status quo would be to approve the management agreement. And so that's what we're asking for. And just to give you a little background, the part of the order that's been approved by all attorneys, including medicine and attorneys, was that the rehearing that he's talking about could be on some certificates that were given. Initially, my client wasn't even aware of what the 100% owner was doing with the company. His interest was severely diluted improperly. That's a whole nother issue. Down to LLCs to a very small percentage, considering his total investment was over $4 million. So it was he's looking to save. The whole reason he's here is to save his investment. And he's already put in, when the company needed it, $150,000, and that was under a receiver certificate. That's the part that can be revisited according to the order at some point in time when there is a distribution, if there is any distribution. Which, if this management is not approved, there's another $300,000 that needs to be paid into the company. My client has already put in a total, including the certificate, of $300,000, just to continue and maintain the assets so that there will be something there. If this is not approved, my client's obviously not going to put any more money in, and I think the company will be closing this week. There's not enough money to pay the salaries. There's over 50 employees, and that's running even at bare bones. That's basically what our position is. And obviously, if you're inclined to grant the management agreement, I think I'll stop speaking.
Question by board members.
I have a question. So the management agreement isn't, you're not expecting profits, but your client wants it in place in order to, at the end of the case, see his investment back. Like,
Hopefully, right. I mean, this was in conjunction with the TOI, as Adam stated earlier. And so ultimately, he's preserving the assets to hopefully have something there. If my client doesn't put the money in, then the company disappears and the assets and everything go away. And as you are aware, they're going to have to destroy the plants probably, and whatever plants can be sold will probably have to be sold at that point in time for less than what the taxes would be due to the state. And that's the other thing. If the business closes, there's substantial taxes that are due to the state and federal, actually, that aren't going to be paid because there's just no money.
if the business closes, I think actually this is a question for maybe Mr. Staley. If the business closes, there's still a license, right? So then there would still be people that wanted to pursue their portion of that license once it's sold, or they would want to step in as the owners and reopen the business.
David Staley for the record. Member Durrett, if the operations themselves closed, there still would be a license attached to ACC Enterprises. My experience has been that generally an operating business has greater value than a non-operating business that just holds the license. But that license does not go away if the operation closes, if that answers your question.
And then if it gets revoked, is that just end of story? If a creditor comes in and says, no, this was actually my license, or the owner sold me this percentage and I can prove it, but the license has already been revoked, is it, no, it's been revoked, it doesn't matter, it goes away?
And Member Durrett, just to clarify, I believe there is a provision in our regulations that if it goes permanently non-operational after a certain period of time, it would be deemed surrendered. I can't point you to the exact regulation right now, but I just want to mention that as well. So that could be another issue.
But what if it was revoked? Like, say, they can't pay taxes, for example, it gets revoked. if there are interested parties, is there anything they could redeem at that point, or it is just gone? There's no litigating over percentages. There's no reinstating it. It's just gone and nobody gets anything.
Well, if it's revoked, they get a chance to reapply or renew it. And that can be anytime from 2 to 10 years. So, I mean, effectively,
I'm
not really there.
Last question, I promise.
Member Durrett, I'm sorry. One of the issues here is that the current ownership is under our investigation. It's not clear that ACC Enterprises was 100% owned by the deceased owner. And in the court documents and in the testimony, we found evidence that other people are asserting claims. So while we're not there yet, I think at a high level, you have a license. So even if the operations sell or close and the license is still maintained, we still don't know who owns that license. We have investigators working on that now.
Yeah, so that was my last question is, at what point in the litigation does that get sorted out? Before there's a sale of the license?
So that's what we're trying to work through. And that's why the parties are trying to work with the receiver to resolve this, because it is not clear based on I mean, you can read the receiver reports, but it's unclear as to what the actual ownership is, and that could be litigated for years. But that doesn't benefit if you do that. Company shuts down, all the employees are out of work, business goes away. So the parties have been trying to work together in good faith to resolve that issue with the receiver and with, of course, staff to try to keep the business open and trying to resolve all the outstanding tax issues, fines, violations, everything. That's what we're trying to work through to resolve this. This is just one minor piece of it.
Name for the recorder.
Sorry, Adam Fulton, behalf of ACC.
You wanted to make one more comment, and I wanted to hear from the receiver again.
Yes, thank you, Chair Douglas, members of the board and director. Just one point. Neil Tomlinson on behalf of the interveners. Certainly nobody wants the business to close and nobody wants to let these employees go. That's not our intent here at all. We just want to make sure that we don't get over our skis here and try to get some sort of final approval in place that is later going to come back to haunt people. We just don't want that to happen. So if in fact this conditional approval that's in place, if in fact it does expire, then the status quo would be to just extend that conditional approval. We believe that the imprimatur stamped by this board of some sort of final approval on this management agreement is not going to be a good thing for all the interested parties who have significant investment in this, in ACC. So certainly it's a complex issue. There's a lot of sub issues involved. The parties are all working together and we want to move this forward, but we just don't believe that, any form of a final approval is really warranted here. If the conditional approval is expiring, then extend it, allow it to be extended, but let's not have some final approval and close the door on this management agreement, because it's just not time to do that.
Well, you need to understand that the management agreement that's being proposed under the auspices of the receiver, which is approved and being supervised both by the court and by this body. So it's not a final. It's just a partial agreement that aids a receiver if in fact it's approved in either one of the conditions in that part. So please understand that. I'd like the receiver in terms of kind of summation of their position and based on what's been stated.
Thank you, Chair Douglas. And status quo is what the receiver is trying to do upon his appointment. That's what he's been trying to do, and that's what the management agreement does. If we lose the management agreement, I fear we're going to lose the funding. Council for Strata seem to have suggested they're not willing to fund without a formal approval from the board. If we don't have the approval and we don't have the funding, we would have to give notice to temporarily cease operations, which would result in the receiver having to either destroy all the plants that are there, maybe fire sale them. But as Mr. Fulton said, we might be selling those at a loss actually. given the tax implications and overhead expenses of those plants. So really, this management agreement is preserving the status quo, is preserving the assets, saving jobs, and it's maximizing the value of the inventory and the licenses that can be sold at a later date to the highest bidder, which is in the best interest of the creditors. And I really have never understood the objection or opposition to the management agreement, because it is a win-win. It covers ACC's expenses at no cost to the estate. It doesn't negatively impact the creditor's rights in any way. And just the only issue has ever been the profits, and I do understand that concern. And the court had a similar concern, and we addressed it with the court by making profits subject to a subsequent motion. And I think doing the same with the board would be fine with Strata, and we'd be happy to comply with that.
Questions by board members, either parties? That's why I asked.
Sorry. So the Strata would be the beneficiary of the profit. So that's why creditors might have a problem with this, right? And might want to, they're out if this is agreed to, and there's no limit to this. There's no like they'll get the profits for 1 year. It's just, they're just all cut out.
So that when we're referring to the profits, it would really be the operational revenue that's generated. It wouldn't be liquidation proceeds. And so we are moving forward with that liquidation. We expect it to happen in the next 2 to 3 months. So we have been operating at $125,000 loss every month. Even after cuts, we're still around $100,000. So if there are any profits, we understand the concerns of the creditors, and that's why when we were before the court last week, we said we would come back to the court if we have profits to distribute. The receiver would hold those funds. If any profits are generated, the receiver would hold them, and at that time, we'd file a subsequent motion to the court and ask for the court to approve distribution of those funds based on the management agreement, and the court can either approve the motion or deny motion in whole or in part. And we, if it will be satisfactory to the board, we can come back to the board with the same authorization. But again, in the next 2 or 3 months, I can't imagine that happening. And the profits, that would not apply to liquidation proceeds. So if we sell the company, we sell through this liquidation, this manager isn't receiving its profits. We're going to be going through a full creditor claims process. We are going to be asking the court to approve that claims process.
Okay.
Creditors will be paid in the order of their priority, and the court would be authorizing a separate distribution of those proceeds that are separate from any profits generated through revenues.
So I think I after struggling, I think I thought of something that would make me comfortable, and I'm just throwing it out there for whoever makes the motion, that if this was conditional for a certain amount of time, because then we're not getting involved in your contract, we're not disagreeing with what the court says, but then this could come back at some point for us to reconsider once the dust has settled. So I just want to throw that out there to the other board members.
Thank you, Member Durrett. My one concern with that proposal is I worry that the manager may not fund if it's not a formal approval. And yeah, we're relying on that funding to keep operating. And so that's my concern with that condition.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Unless you've been quiet on this one, do you have anything you wish to weigh in on, or are you satisfied?
Mr. Chairman, I understand the notion that this has been conditionally approved by the executive director based on investigations of our staff. It's set to expire today. If we were to direct the executive director to go ahead and continue the conditional approval, to me, that's a difference without a distinction, because we're basically saying we're okay with the conditional approval. So I don't know that that's any different than us saying we do approve it with a condition, for example, that no distributions be made, without our approval, which is already in place by the court, and the receiver is already under our jurisdiction. So I guess if there's any comment about that, but I see that potential pathway as really not different from a formal approval by us today, if that's the way the board wants to go. And I guess we could condition it that the same way the court did, that there be no distributions. Because really, I mean, we know what's in the management agreement. We know who these parties are. I guess there is some question about, or claims anyway, about the ownership structure, but we're certainly not going to resolve those today. And our staff is, dutifully reviewing that, as well as, the parties who are reporting to the court. So, yeah, I guess, and my concern is that I do agree that Mr. Staley reiterated this, and I've seen this just in my travels, is that, a business like this that closes, it loses pretty much all of its value. It'd be very difficult for the receiver to find a buyer in these circumstances if it's not an ongoing concern. Even if it's not cash flowing at all. But the closure of the business, I think, would be a major problem for every party. So I mean, I'm comfortable going forward today if we condition it however the board feels is appropriate. I think that's actually a better outcome than trying to direct the executive director to approve it again. By doing that, we're effectively telling him to approve it. So I don't know why we wouldn't just approve it if that's the outcome. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I don't have any more questions, Mr. Chair.
My questions have been answered. I'm still a little, for me, problematic as to form, but the matter is we've appointed a receiver. It's been under the supervision of the receiver. There are things that are being worked out. It's also, more importantly, under the supervision of the court. The court is indicating that disbursement of funds will be their approval. The receiver is giving monthly reports back to the cannabis compliance as they are obligated to do. I guess the only other condition I would make a motion for approval of this, that we tickle this matter for 6 months to have it back on for a status of what's going on. And that will point us in a direction of what we might need to do or not need to do, depending on what's happening. I would say in the form that's been set forth, to approve the management agreement, subject to conditions the court has placed on this, their review and approval of funds being paid. So in substance, the short form is to approve what's before us, have it come back before us in 6 months, just if there's new information or concerns as to what's going on.
Member Dredd, I'll second that, and I just want to make the comment that that's kind of just what I had in mind, was coming back before the board to check on it. Given the statement that the profitability would just be, the strata would be entitled to the profits from the operations and not from any sale. That was my second.
So it's been moved and seconded at this point. Any additional discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 And carried. Thank you, and gentlemen, good luck with this.
Thank you very much.
That moves us to item number 7, approval of resolution. Notice of final licensure, TRNVD 670 LLC, RD 670. Discussion only.
Chief Gilbert. Good morning, Chair. Sorry. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Steve Gilbert for the record. Agenda item 7A is an informational item presented as a notice to the board of establishments that have been issued their final license since the last board meeting. We have one license to note today. TRNV 670 LLC, or TRNV, applied for an adult use cannabis retail store license during the September 2018 application period held by the Nevada Department of Taxation. On December 5th, 2018, TRNV was issued a conditional license for an adult use retail store facility in Humboldt County. On November 22nd, 2021, CCB staff conducted a pre-opening inspection and audit of the facility located at 3302 Traders Way in Winnemucca. The inspection and audit results revealed some deficiencies not in compliance with the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Regulations and Title 56 of the Nevada Revised Statutes. A statement of deficiency was issued on November 30th, 2021. TRNV submitted a plan of correction in response. An approved plan of correction was issued by the CCB on December 29th, 2021, demonstrating TRNV has met the regulatory operational requirements in NCCR and NRS. As a result, the CCB approved and issued a final license to TRNV 670 LLC on February 16th, 2022. With that, Chair, members of the board, I'm happy to answer questions.
This was on for informational. Unless the board has any questions, we'll move our agenda. That takes us to item number 8, briefing to the board from Mr. Klein as our Executive Director.
Thank you, Chair. So today I'm just going to briefly talk about a new process that we'll be introducing shortly after the board meeting today. This process has to do with transfers of interest. The process that we'll be putting forth is a conditional TOI process, and this will allow for the board to consider conditionally approving some transfers of interest that would qualify under this conditional TOI approval process. This would give the board and board staff an additional tool and a little more flexibility in the approval process, and it will speed up the process to a degree at a time that we're still just coming out of the applications that were in the queue as a result of the extended review period. Now, not all applications will qualify. They will need to meet a number of conditions that includes, only transactions that would be between current operators, so current individuals who are licensed currently in the industry, or it would include any transactions that would result in passive ownership or investors, which would own under 5%. There would also be conditions on these approvals, if approved by the board, which would include a complete unwinding of the transaction in certain circumstances. And obviously, the board would maintain full authority over these transactions until they came back in front of the board for full approval. So, board, you received a memo on this, and next steps here would be to issue a policy statement, which will come out shortly after this board meeting, listing the details of this process and who would qualify, And then at that point, our investigations team, our agents would proactively reach out to applicants to indicate that they may qualify for this. At that point, the board could likely see some of these approvals up for consideration at the April board meeting. So with that, we can answer any questions here. Chief Staley can also help answer any questions that the board members may have on this process.
Mr. Chairman, this is Member Nylander. I just have a quick comment. I think when we started this, Mr. Chairman, it was really you and me and Mr. Klimas. So we saw this coming. You know, we were going to inherit this giant backlog of TOIs, and I think I'm very much in favor of this new process because it will allow us to clear some of the backlog where we really don't have any significant issues, you know, where it's owner to owner, people who have been previously licensed. And I think the board certainly has the discretion to determine how to, you know, set up the process of hearing these things. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. I think it's going to help licensees get through the process quicker. And I'm very comfortable now that we have, you know, a seasoned staff now. We've, under Mr. Staley's direction, you know, we've hired a number of investigators from different fields, and the ones who were here from the beginning are now becoming seasoned investigators. And so I'm real comfortable that we're capable of doing more of an expedited process. And I think that's in the best interest of the state as well as the licensees and applicants. So I didn't really have any questions. I know, you know, we'll run across some issues along the way. It's one thing to put the process in paper and the policy, but certainly we're going to have to, as we've done this entire time, we're going to have to scrub everything and pivot when we have to. But I'm certainly comfortable going forward with the process. That's just a comment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Any?
No, I completely agree. I really appreciate the effort to streamline and help the industry with their concerns with potential delays. So thank you.
Chair Douglas, for the record, I've reviewed this also. I think it's a real good first step in expediting the process. I would ask Mr. Klimas to consult board members. From my standpoint, I think that this conditional approval process, I'd like to see it on our agenda under consent so we could approve it in one motion, not have to take them individual unless a board member wanted an item separated from that as a safety valve. But that's just me. So I'd ask Mr. Klimas to kind of canvass the board members, see operational with doing what he's recommended from the standpoint of the board's involvement. Minimal reporting back to us in terms of those who are on the conditional list. Don't want to see reports more than 2 pages. If we did something like that, be very minimal since it's a conditional. That's just my thoughts. But
amen to that, Mr. Chairman. 2 pages.
Thank you, Chair and members. Noted. And that's it for my executive director's report.
Our next meeting date is scheduled for April 26th. And item number 10, items for future agenda. If anyone has any, they can so say today at the board or communicate directly to myself or Director Klimas. Takes us to 9, public comment, if we have any.
Looks like we have some public comment in Las Vegas. Please come up and state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Will Adler. I'm here representing Silver State Government Relations and several folks who have reached out to me on this one. In general, just the transfer of interest process is one that is creating, a lot of stress and a lot of hanging, issues out there. The management agreement we heard today is one of those stressful situations, right? When you have a transfer of interest that doesn't have a foreseeable end, right? That has 2 or 3 year timelines. You get these groups that cannot do the investment needed to save the company, right? We heard about that today. I'm very hopeful that this conditional approval license process will help speed that up or help do that. But one of the concerns is that it is not a final licensing process, right? It is still another conditional. And will people be able to invest or do, those next steps or those, further things to speed it up and, really save some of these companies is to be seen. So I do hope this process does have some way to sort of put the easy approved ones together and green light those as fast as you can, because it is something that a lot of people are feeling the stress for in this industry and, would like to see move forward quicker. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Amanda Connor with the law firm of Connor and Connor. I appreciate staff and the board's efforts to improve the transfer of interest process. The transfer of interest that I was presenting on today was submitted October 1st of 2018 and was heard by the board today in March of 2022. So clearly we need to figure out how to process these transfers of interest quicker so that companies aren't left lingering for years and years. However, I have concerns with the proposed conditional transfer of interest approvals with the condition that it could be completely unwound by the board before going to final approval. The concern I have is that local jurisdictions will not allow the companies to move forward on such conditional approvals because they would require that the transaction be completed for them to move forward in the transition. And if the final investigation, final approval is going to take months or years, you have a company that's in this pending limbo still because the board has conditionally approved them, but they can't close the transaction or move forward with the locals. Therefore, while I appreciate all the efforts of the board, I think we need to think about other processes that would allow them to completely close the transaction and obtain local jurisdiction approvals. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Good morning, Chairman Douglas, Executive Director Climate. My name is Paul, and the other distinguished board members. My name is Paul Michael Burgess. I'm a business owner here in Las Vegas. My public comment, I've been in communication with Administrator Steve Gilbert and Megan from licensing. I want to thank them for their professionalism dealing with a super nerd. I petitioned the board in October of 2021 through NRS 678. B.630, as it was the petition with the process that fit the processes I was trying to get my petition to the board. Followed all petition laws and guidelines for the petitioning to the CCB. At this time, there is no petition process for social equity interpretation of Nevada laws or executive orders. The petition is a legal document with just laws and facts, evidence, asking for interpretation of Nevada laws and presidential executive orders from the CCB surrounding social equity, Governor Steve Sisolak's powers and technology. The NRS does not speak to at this time. The petition is for me and my business, but also for the local brown and Black community in Nevada on direct questions they have and context on what does social equity mean in Nevada. As a part of my business is ground robots and drone cannabis drone delivery. I have partnered with a woman who is the founder of Women and Drones. We will be doing a drone pilot training and jobs for women in the state of Nevada to work with the state, with the economic development department surrounding smart city initiatives. This would also be a great revenue for the state and CCB around automation tax. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else in Las Vegas? Do we have anyone in Carson City?
I see no public comment, Carson City.
That we would close our public comment. If there's anything submitted online, it will be duly noted. With that, Item 12, the happiest part of, other than recess, adjournment.